it's hard to convey the overall experience to a youngster. Like, this is one thing that drives me nuts about hunters of all ages is they'll talk about like, oh, I want to go to Colorado and shoot a bull elk. I'm like, no, you want to go hunt elk in Colorado. There's a huge difference. And for kids, it's easy for them to sort of just boil it down and equate it to, oh, I'm going to shoot a deer, or I'm going to shoot some squirrels. No, you're going to go hunt and you might not kill anything. Or, a Wyoming trip is a pretty abstract concept. Like what it contains versus how you could understand it if you've never done it they're worlds apart in some ways. And so that's
absolutely.
It's a hard thing to sort of anchor the real experience to what they're going to do. I mean, I struggle with that with my girls all the time.
Yeah. And she's never been out there. I mean, I would like to just have her go with us. And we have some friends that we stay with when we're out there, and we stay at their ranch, and then we drive out to public land every day and day hunt. Mm-hmm. But I thought, she could go out and just hang out at the ranch. I mean, they already said they'd love to have her at the ranch. She can go out and check cattle with them and all that stuff, just to get a feel for the space. And, her biggest thing is, well, I don't think I can walk that far. And Chance goes, oh, you'll be fine. And I'm looking at Chance going, dude, we're walking like 12 miles a day.
Yeah.
She's not going to walk that far. She'll peter out after about a mile and a half in, and she'll be ready to go back to the house. And then what are you going to do?
Yep.
It's just, she needs to grow a little bit and make that decision, because, man, I know how tired I am at the end of the day. It wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
We'd all be disappointed. We'd all be pretty grumpy because I know how bad we want to hunt when we're out there. I mean, it's go time from 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when we get up. It's like, get your stuff on. Let's get in the truck. We need to get out there before daylight. And she's just not ready for that.
Yeah. I've hunted with a pile of adult men who aren't doing 12 miles in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, the big eye opener for me is when I take people pheasant hunting and I see how long they last.
Yeah.
in the sloughs, and you go, okay, you're not, you're not maybe Western hunting material.
It was hard for us when we first started going out there. Let's see, this coming fall. It'll be 5 years that we've been going out there. And we went out to the ranch. We thought we were going to hunt the ranch. They had a really bad hailstorm that summer, and all the growth was gone. There were no deer on the ranch. And we were like, we don't know what to do. And the neighbor kid came down and goes, go hunt public land. We're like, what's that? I mean, we're from Indiana. We've got a teeny tiny amount of public land, so we'd never hunted it. And he's like, well, I'll get a map. And he kind of showed us. And then he went out there with us on one day. And he's like, I'll kind of give you an idea how to hunt mule deer. And well, that day Chance killed his first mule deer. And I'm like, what? So then we were hooked. And we knew that was the only way to do it. We knew that Western hunting was kind of going to be our thing. If we could, as long as we could afford to do it, we were going to go out there and do it. We had a place to stay, which took some of the expense out for us, which was important.
Yep.
And we were hunting state land or walk-in areas where you can't camp. So it wasn't a lot of BLM land around there that we could get to. Mm-hmm. A lot of it was checkerboarded and we couldn't get to it anyway. So everything just kind of fell into place the way we needed it to for it to be a good place for us to go hunt.
Yep.
So, last year, 2 years ago, there were 3 of the biggest mule deer I've ever seen in my life behind the ranch house, up behind their buttes on their property. And they said, you can hunt here if you want. So first day we got there, Chance and I hiked up the buttes, and of course, coming from 800 feet above sea level to a couple thousand, we think we're stroking out by the time we get to the top of the hill because we can't breathe.
Yep.
But we see these deer, and we just looked at each other and we're like, those are the biggest things we've ever seen. And then I looked at him, I'm like, I'm not interested. And he looked at me, he said, I'm not either. Yep. He said, if I wanted to go out my back door and shoot a deer, I'd do it at home.
Yep.
He said, I didn't drive 15 hours. I said, no, I want the suck. I want it to be miserable, and I want to go to public land, and I want to find one. Yep. So that's what we did. But Western hunting tell you what, it's an eye opener for people. If you aren't familiar with the thin air and you aren't familiar with the hiking and the distance you have to put on it, it can break you down pretty quick.
It definitely can. I think it's, I think what you're talking about there, as far as the revelation of the quality and the quantity of public land, is so important. We hear all we hear is complaining about, crowded, over the counter units, or 300 Arkansas trucks at the trailhead in Colorado. And when you come from a state in the Midwest or the East, where we might have big national forests or something to deal with in some places for sure, but just the quality and the quantity of public land out west is incredible. And that, like, if you're willing to work in most situations, you're going to get an opportunity. It's just not, I just think it's so much harder east of the Mississippi to get an opportunity at a quality animal on public land than it is out west. I mean, I know that's not like a big secret, but I know a lot of people who live out west who look at it differently. And I'm like, man, you have no idea how good you have it. And they're like, oh, we don't want you here because you're going to wreck it. I'm like, there's room for everybody. Believe me. Like when and you know how it is when you get out there, the first time I hunted Wyoming was the first time I'd ever made a Western trip. And my dad and I were antelope hunting with rifles and drove out there. And I was like, just blown away at the road hunting. I'm like, we have, we can go for miles and hike these hills, and you're not carrying, it's a day trip. You're not carrying that much, and you're hunting antelope. So you kill one, you can get it out. But I was just like, why is everybody so content to just stay on the road and try to kill one from the road? And it's just a wild, it's an eye opener,
Yeah. I saw a comment on I don't know, it was a public land forum on Facebook hunting people, and some guy was just having a fit. I don't want the out-of-state hunters and non-residents don't need to come here. And I'm thinking, he goes, it's too crowded. I thought, dude, come to Indiana and go to Morgan Monroe State Forest or go down to Hoosier National State Forest where there are people everywhere. And then tell me how crowded your state is with non-residents. Because when Chance and I go out there, once we get out on public land and we're out there hiking around, we don't see anybody all day. We don't see a soul. I mean, we might see people in the morning driving by, going out to their spots or whatever, or checking places to see how many people are in certain. But beyond that, you don't see anybody. And I love my state. I love Indiana. I love the people here. But it's a different mentality, too, when we go to Wyoming. If we do, in that rare chance, bump into somebody. We bumped into an old guy. As we were walking out one day, he goes, what your kids hunting? I said, well, we're hunting mule deer. You're not hunting elk? No. He goes, well, let me just tell you where all the mule deer are. And he goes into this long story about where he's seen muleys and where the best places are to go. And if you ran into somebody here, they would have a fit. They're like, what are you doing here? I was here first. And it would just, it's just I don't know. I'm not saying the people out there are more friendly. I just think that they're so used to having so much more space that they're not as protective or selfish of the space that they're in. Yeah. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. I've encountered that a ton. And I think, when you hear, we've been down this road a million times on this podcast, but when you hear somebody say, this area is too crowded and I don't want non-residents there, what they're saying is I want easy hunting for myself. Yeah. And I get it, but none of us are entitled to easy hunting. Like we're just not. And like you talked about with the mule deer right behind the ranch house, it's not necessarily that great of a thing just to have easy ones. And I've talked about these industry hunts I've done where I haven't burnt a calorie and killed big animals on these guided hunts. And so it's sort of a false god to chase, to be like, oh, I want everybody gone so I can have easy stuff. And the other thing that I see so much, and I just had an editor for one of the big hunting magazines. We were talking about turkey hunting this spring, because of the quarantine and you can't travel. And so he lives in Nebraska, and he's like, well, I'll finally probably hunt some public land in Nebraska because you non-resident hunters won't be all over it, and I can go out and have a good hunt. And I'm like, hey, bro, if you're having trouble finding turkeys on public land in Nebraska, that's not my fault.
That's his problem.
Yeah, that's on you, because it's not that freaking hard. But it's just like, it's just easy to take these excuses and go, no, I'm not going to do it. It's somebody else's fault. I haven't filled my tags. That stuff just wears me out.
Yeah, and we prefer. I mean, we're not getting any younger. Chances. I think he's 48. I'm 43. I'll be 44 this year. But we choose to go as far from the road as possible because we know the locals aren't going to. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're hunting, like you said, they're road hunting. They're kind of cruising by, seeing what they can see from the road. But we just assume that, look, you know what, if they're all hunting from the road, they're going to be pushing stuff away from the road. So let's just, this is our vacation for the year. Let's just take advantage of the space and go out there and search the whole thing. And that's what we do. I mean, I don't know. I figure if we're going to go out and kill ourselves for a week a year, there's worse things that could happen. I mean, we're a little sore and beat up when we get home, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Well, it's how freeing is it coming from a place with limited space? I mean, the thing I hate the most about where I live is the places you get to hunt are very small. So you kind of got to become an ambush master because you're not going out to walk one down. And then when you get out west and you have the room to go glass and cover miles and miles, it's so freeing. It's just such a wonderful feeling.
It is. I will be honest. I usually suffer some Western hunting withdrawal when we get back. I come back, and if I climb up in a tree stand after we get back from Wyoming, I am miserable. I am absolutely miserable. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. So I'll get down on the ground just to kind of feel like it's something different. And I hardly ever hunt out of a tree stand anymore. I'm on the ground almost all the time. And I think, honestly, Wyoming and Montana did that to me because I want to be closer. I don't know. There's something about being able to have the freedom to move around. And when you hike and hike and hike out in Wyoming and Montana for an animal, and then you come home and just have to sit, it's miserable. And then, after a few weeks, you're like, okay, I'm back in my Indiana mode, and I know what I need to do if I'm going to fill a tag. So you get over it, but it's tough.
Well, it's kind of, I was thinking about this with turkey hunting the other day. If you have a place to scout, I'm hunting a private place here by my house, so I can scout the crap out of it. I got a bunch of blinds. I'm running cameras because I have nothing else to do. And then I have really good decoys. I'm using Dave Smith decoys, and I feel like it's almost too much. And that's it. And so it makes me want to go out of state, which I usually do a couple times a year, and just take a shotgun and put my back to a tree and be out in the open where you can get busted. Because it's kind of like the food plot thing for whitetails. Like if you have enough land and you have food plots and you have the blinds and everything, you can really make success happen pretty easily. We've kind of figured that out with turkeys. We have a system now, and it's still fun, and it's a great way to get kids out, whatever. But you do feel, I can feel something slipping away, and it makes me, like you're talking about sitting on the ground for deer, it makes me feel that way. Like, okay, let's have something at stake here. Let's risk something and see if we can get busted or do something in a way that there's more challenge to it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because I started hunting as an adult that I zoomed through the stages of being a hunter, So I went from being, super excited to wanting a big buck to, wanting to fill all my tags to just like, okay, you know what? I want this to be hard. I want it to be harder. I don't want just to sit in a tree stand and wait for a deer to walk by. So I stopped using cameras. I don't put any cameras out anymore. I sit on the ground. I don't use a blind. And Chance is like, what is wrong with you? You know how many deer, because I think the last 2 years, I didn't fill a tag in Indiana. I didn't this year because I took kids out almost every time I went hunting. I had somebody out hunting. The last year, I sat and watched and I took pictures, and I had deer within 5 yards of me. And I just sat there and watched them and learned what they were doing. I was down at a property I have permission to hunt down in Park County. And I sat for 10 hours on the ground in a brush pile. And Chance is like, what in the hell are you doing? And I'm like, you won't believe what I've seen. And it was, I think it was pre-rut, but I had a doe and a fawn walk up to a buck, and, they're all standing there together, and the doe is cleaning the fawn, and then 5 turkeys come tumbling down the hill in front of me, and watching this little spike buck come into where this bigger one was, and watching them kind of, circle each other. And I learned more sitting there for 10 hours not taking a shot on something that I ever could have from a YouTube video or reading a book. It was just so worth it to sit there and just take it all in and learn.
Yep.
And so I think, I don't know if as an adult, I don't know if it's just a different perspective, because if you were hunting all your life, maybe people take those things for granted. They just want to go out and they want to, they want to shoot their deer. They want to fill their tag or whatever. But for me, I'm still like a sponge. I'm still trying to learn as much as I can. And I'm getting more enjoyment out of it than I was when I was just going out and film 3 tags every year.
Yep.
I mean, my feelings aren't hurt if I don't film one of my tags because I'm still learning. And if I'm taking kids out, that's pretty special for me. So I don't really care.